Have you ever noticed how, in sports, losing a key player can make everything feel like a house of cards about collapse? Fans of Toronto Maple Leafs know this drama all too well. Mitch Marner, who until recently was synonymous with creativity, energy, and one of the team's main offensive engines, is now part of the Vegas Golden Knights roster. This shook the team in ways nobody expected and opened a real crossroads for Toronto's management. It's not just about losing a star on offense. It's about having to rethink the entire structure and, surprisingly, that might mean giving up a fundamental piece on defense. We're talking about Morgan Rielly or Brandon Carlo, names that have been gaining attention as potential trade candidates to bring back balance and offensive firepower. If you think trading a defenseman to try to recover some of the lost offense sounds a bit crazy, hold on, stick with me, and we'll break down the story and understand the reasons behind this delicate decision. The main news is clear. After Marner's departure, the Maple Leafs are seriously considering moving one of their top defensemen to open up roster and salary cap space for an offensive player. Nick Kypreos, one of the most trusted NHL insiders, pointed out that both Morgan Rielly and Brandon Carlo are on the radar for this possible trade. That alone is a shock to many fans, since Rielly has been seen as one of the team's pillars for years, and Carlo, despite being a recent addition, has shown solid and consistent performance. Marner's exit left such a big hole that management is forced to think outside the box, or better yet, off the ice, to try to replace the offensive production. What seems like a simple roster adjustment actually hides a complex equation involving performance, contracts, and even emotional chemistry inside the locker room. It's important to understand that this situation didn't come out of nowhere. The Toronto Maple Leafs offseason has been relatively quiet so far. No blockbuster trades, few reinforcements that radically change the team's identity. Still, reality hits hard. Losing Marner, who scored an incredible 27 goals and 75 assists last season, is like losing the central piece of a puzzle that was the engine of the offense. Toronto did bring in some targeted pieces to try to patch things up, but the absence of Marner-level replacement is evident, and time is running out. With training camp approaching, General Manager Brad Treliving and his staff know they need to act fast to avoid starting the season at a disadvantage. In this context, the idea of trading one of the defensemen arises as a strategy to free up salary cap space and open up possibilities to seek that offensive reinforcement that can make a difference, especially in the top six. Now, let's analyze who these two defensemen at the center of this possibility are: Morgan Rielly and Brandon Carlo. Morgan Rielly, now 31 years old, is not just another player on the Leafs roster. He is an iconic figure for the franchise, present since his 2012 draft selection, and has been one of the few constant faces amid years of rebuilding and ups and downs. He is much more than a defenseman. He is a technical and emotional reference. Rielly is a modern defender, combining offensive ability with solid defensive reading. He carries the puck, speeds up transitions, and still directly contributes to the attack. However, his contract weighs heavily on the team's plans $7.5 million per season through 2030. Additionally, his contract includes a full no-movement clause, meaning any trade will require his approval. So, trading really is not simple. It involves both financial aspects and a delicate issue of respect and player willingness. On the other side, we have Brandon Carlo, a defenseman with a different style. At 28 years old, Carlo is known for his physical, safe, and classic defensive game, the typical stay-at-home defenseman. He doesn't have Rielly's offensive shine, but his defensive contribution is fundamental, especially in key moments like the penalty kill. Carlo is a recent acquisition for Toronto and, in a short time, has established himself as one of the main names on the blue line. His contract is lighter, with a $3.485 million cap hit through 2027, and he only has a limited no-trade list of 8 teams. In other words, he offers more flexibility to management, which can be crucial in the search for quick solutions for a roster that needs adjustments. During last season, Carlo averaged more than 19 minutes of ice time per game and was among the leaders in block shots in playoffs, showing his commitment and value within the defensive system. But this decision to trade a defenseman isn't just about numbers and contracts. It also involves a human side. Morgan really has a deep connection with Toronto. He grew up within the franchise, witnessed the highs and lows, was one of the pillars holding the team up as other pieces arrived, and still carries the hope of leading the team to the long-awaited championship. His presence in the locker room, his story, and his identification with the fan base make him much more than an athlete, a true local icon. Trading really would mean touching the fans' hearts and the team's DNA. On the other hand, Carlo, despite still building his story in Toronto, has already shown himself to be a dedicated, discreet professional essential for defensive balance. He doesn't shine with spectacular plays, but delivers hard work, physicality, and consistency. His departure would be a technical loss, but less emotionally impactful to the fan base. So, what does all this mean tactically and for the team's future? If Carlo is traded, the Leafs would lose a safe and physical defenseman, which could weaken their defensive system, especially in special team situations like the penalty kill. This would increase the responsibility on young players like Simon Benoit and Timothy Liljegren, who are still establishing themselves on the team. Losing Carlo would require the team to rely more on the speed and offensive ability of remaining defenders, which could unbalance the defense. Trading Rielly, although it would free up more financial space to pursue an impactful offensive reinforcement, would pose an even greater challenge to the team's balance. Rielly is the team's top offensive defenseman, and his departure will require another defenseman to take on that responsibility, something not always easy to replace. This situation is not unprecedented in the NHL world. Remember when the Calgary Flames in 2022 traded Matthew Tkachuk for Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar? They gave up a high-impact forward to try to reinforce other areas, but ended up facing imbalances that cost them dearly. For the Leafs, the lesson is clear. Taking risks in trades can be necessary, but the balance between offense and defense cannot be sacrificed without careful planning. Considering the team has already lost an offensive engine with Marner's exit, any mistake could be fatal to their ambition of winning in the upcoming season. In the midst of this scenario, the opinions of the community and experts also highlight the complexity of the decision. Nick Kypreos, for example, points out that the Leafs are seriously evaluating moving a defenseman to facilitate an offensive trade. On social media, the debate heats up, Some fans stand firmly in defense of Rielly, seeing him as a symbol who cannot be sold at any cost. Others believe Carlo, with his more flexible contract and less offensive style, is the likelier trade candidate. Forums like HF Boards raise interesting hypotheses, suggesting possible interested teams, such as Nashville or Philadelphia, who seek defensive reinforcements and have offensive players who could be targets of the Leafs. The speculation is intense, and anxiety grows by the day. Summing all this up, we face a difficult choice. Maintain defensive stability and risk a less productive offense, or sacrifice part of the defense to try regain the offensive strength lost with Marner. If Rielly leaves, the emotional and technical impact will be great, but could open the way for significant offensive reinforcement. If Carlo is sacrificed, the defense loses a physical and reliable piece, but financial flexibility and ease of negotiation are greater. Either way, the Leafs need to act fast and smart because the window for reinforcements is closing and the training camp clock is ticking. Looking to the near future, everything will depend on management's ability to turn this trade into a competitive advantage. Landing a winger capable of producing 60 or 70 points, with a favorable contract and quick system fit, could be the difference that puts Toronto back in the fight for the top of the conference. On the other hand, failing in the negotiation could leave the team vulnerable with a weakened defense and a still lacking offense, a bleak scenario for a franchise with high aspirations. The pressure is in Brad Treliving and his team's hands to make the right decision and build a balanced and competitive roster for 2025-26. The story unfolding behind the Leaf scenes is, therefore, one of adaptation and rebalancing. Marner's departure changed the game, and now the team needs to reconfigure its pieces to avoid falling behind. Trading a defenseman to add more firepower up front is a risky strategy, but perhaps the only viable option considering the assets available and salary cap rigidity. All this while the roster already lacks options for moves. The time to think is running out, and every move could define the season's success or failure. And you, Leafs fan, what do you think about all this? Is trading Carlo to try to replace lost offense worth the risk of weakening the defense? Or should the team hold on to Rielly at all costs and find another solution up front? Would you be willing to give up your idol to try to get a name that gives the team a new face? I want to know your opinion in the comments. Let's discuss, because in the end, the one living this emotional roller coaster is you, following every move closely. And let's be honest, cheering for the Leafs is always a nerve-wracking game, right? And when the general manager starts moving pieces that can mess everything up, the anxiety only grows. But that's what makes the passion for hockey so intense. We suffer, we cheer, we celebrate, and of course, we stick around here to cover every detail for you with a touch of humor, because no one can handle so much tension without some lightness. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Leaf situation, leave your like here, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, so you don't miss any news in this heated offseason. Much more is coming. Trade analyses, rumors, and of course, full coverage of the 2025-26 season. And when the bombshell drops, you know you'll hear it here first. See you next time, and let's keep cheering together.